of the watch party here on the Watch List channel. What's going on, you guys? How you doing? Did you guys know? I'm gonna let you in on a secret. Since it's Monday, it is the best damn day of the week. It is the beginning of your week. It's the first opportunity for you to get going on with what's happening in the world, to find out just how bad things might be or how you may need to respond to it. I don't like to come in with such negativity, so let's just say this is the start of a wonderful week. Let's see if we can start turning things around, if not just the small portions of your life, but also as the destruction comes down in this country. And boy, do I have things on that. I'm running in here a little bit halfway wild, halfway with the chicken like its head cut off, jumping around, trying to figure out exactly how to settle all this in. I've got TDR in like an hour, bro. And every Monday now, I feel this extra pinch and crunch of time. But every Monday, there's like 17 things to talk about, because over the weekend, this administration destroys more things. More people actually have a little bit of a pushback and fight. But as this whole thing is turning into the militaristic takeover of this country, as he's now trying to start sending folks, troops unto citizens of the United States, as he said he would, there's always something else to try and break down and figure out. But I hope you guys had a good weekend, despite all the madness. I'm glad you guys are here. Sorry I couldn't chat for you guys for a couple seconds, but I literally just jumped back in and sat in the chair, which is why I'm still a little bit discombobulated and don't really know where I'm going with this just yet. So let me settle in. Let me settle in. Okay, everything's here. Good. Got that. Good morning. What's up, Ma? I'm not sure if I said that, but I appreciate you being here. There is something else though. I did I did see a lot of you guys responded to the post I had about the story that was, I think, blowing up a little bit more on Friday from our friend Razzle Dazzle Mo. I did a couple updates on him. He's the guy who was trying to expose Donald Trump, not Donald Trump. I was going to expose Mike Johnson, Donald Trump's ass kisser, and his Grindr situation. I'm going to try to get to it. I just can't start with it. There's something a lot more important going on. And without any more of this setup, now that you guys are now in the building, this is what I'm talking about. Here it comes. Watch. Oh, come on. That would go.
I believe that each one of them walked out of that room yesterday doing a personal analysis of what does this mean for me? And I know for a fact that there's talk inside the military ranks of what is the best way to disobey an unlawful order. How do you do that? And especially now, given the recent Supreme Court ruling, which holds the president immune from criminal acts, but the people he's ordering to do these things are subject to those criminal violations. So how do you say no, especially if the staff judge advocate, the lawyer chain of command has been disrupted, that the military chain of command from civilian to military leaders has been co-opted? It was obvious to me in Secretary Hegseth's speech that he also is all for doing whatever the president orders him to do. And that breaks the boundaries of what two previous Secretary of Defenses, both Mattis and Esper in the first term, when they were ordered to do illegal things, they spoke for the force and said, we don't do that.
The Daily Beast podcast had that interview there with retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. I remember his face was popping up a lot previously in politics and on analysis of what was going on before, specifically, I think, around Trump's first term. But I don't think we should underestimate the severity of what it is that he's talking about. Do you guys remember last week, of course, Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump went and spoke to military leaders, brought them all in from all over the world to come in one particular place and let Pete Hegseth's dumbass talk to them and lecture them about what a true warrior ethos is, because he's a Fox and Friends weekend warrior who then was given this job because of his extreme stupidity and utter loyalty to that fascist in the White House. There was reports from many folks who saw the way that many of those generals and leaders were sitting there, mostly in silence, and, a matter of fact, didn't hit those applause lines or laugh lines or oppositional to his political enemies lines that they expected them to. And I wasn't sure if it was just because that's the standard nature of the way they'll be, or if it's actually some kind of indication of how they may respond. But apparently, according to Mark Hertling, it wasn't a very good sign as far as what is that Trump and Hegseth want. It wasn't the only show that he went on. I want to show you guys this other instance. Same retired lieutenant general talking about that situation. It's pretty stark.
The word I kept hearing from them was embarrassment, because if you look at that picture and you listen or have viewed what happened yesterday in Quantico, you saw myriad numbers of Silver Star awards. You saw myriad Purple Hearts, Bronze Stars, Combat Infantry badges, and they were being lectured on how to do push-ups and lose weight and shave. And it was truly mortifying. But the larger question is, going forward, what happens to the military with this internal dissension that you can seemingly feel when you witness an event like yesterday?
When you look at those faces, it's what I predicted when I was on the show the other day, and that you're going to get poker faces and a stoicism that was reflective of professionalism. But truthfully, those individuals will leave that room or left that room yesterday, and they'll start discussing and analyzing how they can implement some of the lawful orders that they got. Okay, great. We can buck up the standards. We can take a look at the kinds of things to get some soldiers, not all, certainly not even the majority, back in better shape. Take a look at what our ranks look like. But there were also soldiers and all ranks of services in that audience that said, wait a minute, when they were writing down the same kind of checklist that I was writing down, saying, wait a minute, we do that, or we shouldn't do that, or this is a true violation of what we are as professionals, or hey, I've got women in my ranks who are performing admirably. Why should I kind of lump them all together like the secretary did? Or I'm certainly now going to debate with myself, what am I going to say if I'm asked to go on the street and conduct illegal actions? And I guarantee you that the people in that audience will not execute illegal orders. We've been saying that for a long time. This was a disciplinary approach in public with cameras so the whole nation could see. And it was an attempt at separating the military institution from the people that they defend.
He said it pretty clearly, but I don't think we should overlook it. It was an attempt to separate the military leadership from the people that they defend. It's exactly what it is that we've been talking about. It's how Donald Trump said he's going to sick the military, thinks it's his on his political opponents. And his political opponents could be American citizens that stand in the street and protest. Standing in the street and protesting is what it is that he wanted to stop during his first term, when he walked out there in D.C. with the Bible upside down, and there was protesters out there, and he wanted them to be shot in the legs. And Mark Esper, as Hertling also mentioned, was one of these defense secretaries that had to push back on this guy's objectives. Now he's got Pete Hegseth. Think about the difference in those folks. He had John Kelly as his chief of staff, who called him a fascist. This guy was a conservative. He's a Republican, John Kelly. So it's not a matter of left versus right and all that stuff that they keep talking about. It's a matter of a fascist in the White House who's now openly saying the things that everyone openly said he was hinting at before. He pointed out some of those things. He said some of these folks will be sitting in that crowd and they're thinking, well, okay, we can't do that, or we shouldn't do that. Well, these things are a true violation. But he guaranteed that they wouldn't disobey these illegal orders. Well, that's the question that's up for debate now. That's the question that we have to wonder, because again, there's a bunch of silent military leaders. It's not like they're always on MSNBC. They're doing their jobs. But they brought them all in from around the country so he could lecture them and tell them, listen, we're at the military takeover stage of our fascist coup of this country. These are the traitors running the country, and they want the military leaders, no matter where their normal mindsets politically or partisanship are, they're supposed to defend this country. He wants them to attack us. It's kind of like what has been said. I want to highlight this this other retired, what's his ranking? Malcolm Ritchie is his name. He posted this himself, retired lieutenant colonel from the Army. maybe this is helpful to Hertling's argument. Check this part out.
Malcolm S. Ritchie, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, U.S. Army Reserve, 3 combat tours in Iraq, 32 years of service in the United States Army, Army Reserve, and Army National Guard. And I'm here today not as a candidate, making that disclaimer. I am here to express my outrage at the meeting in Quantico, Virginia, between Hegseth, Trump, and all of the senior officers in the United States military and the senior NCO Corps. Those generals, admirals, and senior NCOs sat there in stone-faced silence, listening to the most outrageous speeches ever made in United States military history by the Secretary of Defense and the President of the United States. Secretary of Defense, on his ridiculous rant, trying to take to school generals, admirals, senior NCOs with 10 times the leadership ability, the education, and the experience that the failed Major Hegseth could ever begin to understand. And then they have to listen to the cognitively declined President of the United States, who I would now name as Dictator of the United States, tell this audience that they will be expected to wage war against the American people. That's exactly what Trump said. So don't get on here and try to tell me that he didn't say it. Training grounds in American cities. What does that mean? They're going to go in locked and loaded into American cities, American neighborhoods, and use American citizens as pop-up targets on a live fire training range? This is absolutely astounding abuse of power, which makes, by my estimation, Donald Trump a domestic enemy of the Constitution. Because my oath is to the Constitution, and don't you think for 1 minute, Mr. Trump, that there aren't millions of other veterans and retirees that feel exactly the same way. We are enraged. We are beyond enraged. And we will protest peacefully. And we will go out and vote for the candidates of our choice in the 2026 midterm election, which you better not even try to stop. If you try to stop that by force, that's the nightmare scenario. And I'm not saying by violence, I'm saying politically, basically, you're done, Trump. You're done, Hegseth. It won't be long before you're politically thrown down that dark, deep hole. But don't think it's not going to cause a lot of trauma on the American people as they clutch to the roots of the hole on the way down, trying to survive something that they cannot possibly survive because this nation.
There he is. There's Malcolm Ritchie speaking extensively about his disagreements with this administration. I mean, we always see the pullback coming to, I mean, politically, if you let us, here comes 2026, they don't care. The violence is here. The guns are in our faces. I just hope enough people understand we're at the point now, because they're willing to shoot people, which I'm going to get to in this next story after this, that the violence is here even as they claim victimhood. The way that they always talk about they're violent terrorists, they understand they're the violent terrorists. That's how they're talking. That's how they're being. And they don't expect anyone to do anything else except for standing with signs now and say, hopefully you guys will rethink your long-standing plan to take over this country with your fascism. So, maybe secretly behind the scenes, military leaders are talking about what is it they can do. I don't know. But as Richie pointed out, in case you guys didn't see it, this is that aspect of that speech where Donald Trump was talking about using American cities as training grounds.
Very important mission. And I told Pete, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military. Because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city. with an incompetent governor, stupid governor, stupid. They threw him out of his family business. He was so stupid. I know the family. He becomes governor. He's got money. Not money that he made, but he ran for governor, he won, and now he criticizes us all the time. And last week they had 11 people murdered, 44 people shot. The week before that they had 5 people murdered, 28 people shot. Every weekend they lose 5, 6. If they lose 5, they're considering it a great week. They shouldn't lose any. Very important mission. And
the same song and dance. Don't let the irony get lost on you. I'm talking about J.B. Pritzker being a rich guy who was given money by his family and didn't make it himself. Calm down with that. Everything is upside on its head. This guy's never done anything except for destroy businesses, take money, use it, waste it, and then claim that he's a genius. We know how this guy operates. But this was, again, this is that speech in front of military leaders where he is airing his political grievances with somebody who criticizes him. That was the beef. He goes around just criticizing us. That is the issue. So therefore, he's going to tell his military leaders to then go into that state and specifically in the city of Chicago to go and execute his political retribution for people who criticize his thin-skinned ass. He went and spoke in front of the Navy as well, too. This is what he thinks of Democrats, and this is also what he thinks the military will do for him.
But we have to take care of this little gnat that's on our shoulder called the Democrats. They want to give all of our money to illegal aliens that pour into the country. And, you know, I have a bigger heart than they do. But the problem is when you do that, they come in by the millions. Everybody wants that, so you can't do it.
We are going to take care of this little gnat on our shoulders called the Democrats. Who's we? As he keeps going and speaking in front of military crowds, military leaders, and I guess General Navy midshipmen. I don't know who it is that he's speaking in front of there, but he had another speech where he's talking again to the military to talk about the violence he wants to inflict on his political enemies. This is direct. So I need people to stop talking about how this guy, maybe he's figuring out this deal. Oh, he's got a deal going on in Gaza. He's got a deal going on here. He's destroying the economy. He's destroying our international relations. He's doing all these things on a constant roll downhill. And where his focus right now is on American cities. How much is he more talking about that conflict and that Russian invasion of Ukraine that he was going to end in a day? Instead, he's starting more conflicts, except with American citizens. They're right here. So I gave you guys maybe a little bit of like optimism towards the way things might go. So let me just finish this whole block off with one ex-Homeland Security Chief of Staff, Miles Taylor. He was in Trump's first administration. And since he's seen some level of reality of what it is that he was dealing in, Miles Taylor, I think at this point, Trump considers him a traitor for not continuing to be loyal through his authoritarianism. So Miles Taylor had a thought about what is it these military leaders might do. Because again, I saw that first couple of videos of Hertling talking about the mindsets of many of these guys. And I don't know how much he really knows what all of them may be thinking or what they're deciding to do. But it gives you a little bit of hope like, okay, we've got other guys who know the routine, who've been through it and understand how this country works versus these these three, Stephen Miller, the heads of it, Stephen Miller, Pete Hegseth, and Donald Trump over here trying to take over everything. So maybe this is the other side of that coin. Miles Taylor gives a full explanation as to why.
The military are going to say, no, Mr. President.
Do you want my honest answer?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people out there, look, I deeply respect men and women in uniform. I worked in the Pentagon during the first Bush administration. I have a lot of friends that serve in the United States military. I would like to tell you, no, they are going to push back. They are going to fight against this illegal conduct in the Trump administration. I do not personally believe that's what's going to happen, at least at first. I think you are going to see a lot of the senior ranks of the military rollover. And we may not know about it because these are not folks who are used to vocally and publicly standing up to the president of the United States. It's just not in their DNA. I cannot tell you how hard it was to get even the very vocal generals in senior positions who worked in the first Trump administration to get their asses out there in 2020 and say what they were saying to people like me in private publicly. And my point to them was, I get it. You've spent a career, you got 4 stars on your shoulder. I'm just some punk kid. But you're telling me in private you think this man is a danger to the fabric of our republic? That's not something for dinner conversations. You need to go tell that to the voters who will decide whether to fire or rehire this man. Finally, those people did. But I'm telling you, it is not bred into members of the military to go out there and dissent from the president. So I think he's going to be quite successful in bringing the military to heel. And a quick example of that is what Donald Trump has already done off the coast of Venezuela in blowing up drug boats. This is completely not authorized by the Congress. His missile strikes against drug dealers, while it may make us feel good, no one wants to have sympathy for the drug dealer, they are not lawful. And he's doing that with members of the military in full compliance.
And he wraps up his point by talking about what it is that we've already done with military might, doing already illegal activities and blowing up those boats, which he took their word for it that these are drug boats. When some of those reports from those countries where those boats were from, some of those folks were fishermen. Other folks, they didn't confront them at all. They just blew it up. So who's to know whatever confirmation that they say they have? And I'll go back to my original point. Every time we bring up anybody that's associated with this MAGA administration, this MAGA party, any of these fascists around here, everything that they say, you should start with this question of whether or not it's real, because everything that they say is a lie. Why take anything that they say at face value? But Miles Taylor had a full explanation as to why they just might follow those orders anyway. So take that any way that you want to, and I guess prepare for what it is that we may see. Let's move on to this next story. I'm already 20 minutes in, and I've got so many things going on. Not sure if you guys saw this over the weekend. Not sure which day it happened, but it definitely happened over the weekend. And the response is mind-boggling at times, the way that we look at this and don't call it for what it is.
Is underway after the home of a South Carolina judge went up in flames over the weekend. Take a look. It happened in Edisto Beach, about an hour south of Charleston. The home is owned by Judge Diane Goodstein, who serves as the state circuit court. Officials say 3 people were injured in the fire, including Goodstein's husband, former Democratic State Senator Arnold Goodstein. Judge Goodstein made news last month after issuing a ruling blocking South Carolina from handing over millions of voters' personal data to the Department of Justice.
A judge's home is on fire. It apparently has been firebombed. It's considered an arson. Some of her family members were at home, her husband, I believe, and also a son. The place was completely engulfed in flames. This comes off of this talk about all this violent rhetoric that's coming from the left, even though it studies that now this Trump administration is also sweeping from any records that they think is going to hide from folks, has shown overwhelmingly where the violence and also the violent rhetoric is coming from. We hear them say it every day. But let's tone in more on this particular story of Judge Diane Goodstein. And in case you guys didn't really hear that last aspect, they're pissed at her and came after her because she blocked their order to have voter registration, personal information to be given over to the Department of Justice so they could do whatever it is that they want with it. So they could also maybe create more enemies lists of people that voted the wrong way, because this is a dictatorship. Didn't Donald Trump already tell you that? And when anybody in these other branches of government that are supposed to make this a co-equal branches of government so that, you know, people can feel like they're not being overtaken by this monarch, then they start attacking those, like those in the judicial branch. They've already got, well, the majority of our legislative branch, because the Republican Party is a fascist party now. So that place is on fire. People are talking about it. It's pretty obvious is what it was in response to this, or this targeting of it, that people like Stephen Miller wanted to see happen. And I wasn't the only person who thought about that. Democratic Representative Daniel Goldman also thought about that as well, too. He pointed out Trump, Stephen Miller, and MAGA World have been doxing and threatening judges who rule against Trump, including Judge Goodstein. Today, someone committed arson on the judge's home, severely injuring her husband and her son. And he asks, will Trump speak out against this extreme right that did this? I think it's a pretty simple question. Will he speak out against it? Because he was definitely railing on every time there's any kind of doxing of anybody or anybody that's being attacked. Anytime those Supreme Court justices, those conservative justices had folks standing out in front of their house and wrote something on the chalk on the sidewalk, because that's so threatening. But this judge's house going up in flames after these guys continue to target her and point out that she's one of the bad ones. She's one of the people you have to go attack. You guys have been unleashed. There's no more handcuffs on you. That's the type of things that Stephen Miller and Donald Trump have been talking about, as they then also cry and whine as the victim. So again, don't listen to their dishonesty. So Stephen Miller, because he's a little a peon of a piece of shit, had to respond to what it is that Goldman then said. This is a response directly to this a Democratic congressman. He says, "You're vile, deeply warped and vile. While the Trump administration has launched the first ever government-wide effort to combat and prosecute illegal doxing, sinister threats, and political violence, you continue to push despicable lies, minted smears, malicious defamation, and foment unrest. Despicable." This guy needs to calm his ass down. Meanwhile, the Democrat AG nominee in Virginia is fantasizing about murdering his opponents, and a Biden federal judge is showing radical leniency to a monster who tried to assassinate a Supreme Court justice. While you post your libelous madness, we will keep focusing on delivering public safety and fighting domestic terror. This sumbitch just went through an entire post about domestic terror, talking about how vile and deeply disturbed and warped this Democratic congressman is, because he couldn't sit his ass back with the power that he already has in this fascist administration and continue their despicable behavior. The one thing that they don't like, if you've noticed, Donald Trump does it, this guy definitely does it, is any kind of pushback with any kind of awareness that might let people know who it is that we're dealing with. That's why I'm telling you, the first order of business is to tell everybody, shush, 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 shush. We are not fascists. Don't call us fascists. That's the first primary rule that we have. You can't call us fascists, because too many people might start looking up and going, damn, taking over all of our institutions, holding back money that's already been appropriated by Congress, unleashing the military on the country, taking American citizens in, no due process. That sounds like a bunch of fascists. But if we just hear them do it without anyone calling it out, it makes it much easier for them to fly under that radar, and they don't want that radar going off. And in this particular case, Representative Goldman is one of those points of radar. And he responded again. I appreciate him for it. Here's what he said. Because again, he's wondering when Donald Trump is going to say something about this rhetoric and these results. So Goldman says, now try answering my question. If you're trying to combat political violence, why don't you condemn the political violence against a judge who ruled against you and your administration? It's pretty simple. Do you condemn all political violence or only that against your supporters? And he shouldn't even give him this kind of weird opening to think there's some kind of political violence going on against his folks that aren't committing political violence. Anybody that's confronted ICE agents or DHS officers or the federalization of all these cops in these cities has done so out of self-defense. And as these guys have attacked people, and we're going to get to in a second, damn near killing other folks and definitely killing more people that we've seen disappeared into random gulags and concentration camps. As all that violence goes on, they go in front of cameras and cry. When's the last time you seen Tom Homan? You notice? I don't know. Maybe it's just I've overlooked. Have we seen Tom Homan's sack of cash? Tom Homan, who was up on those, we found out about him having those charges dropped. They got the other mouthpieces out there in the media speaking on his behalf right now, saying the same things that he was. But I want to show you guys a little bit more of who Stephen Miller is. This is the day before that happened, because it's not just that one particular, official that he's going after. Again, this guy is the gas behind all of this Nazification of this administration that Donald Trump is like the front and facing character of. Here's what else Stephen Miller posted. Adam Kinzinger, former Republican, highlighted this. He said the issue is now very simple and clear. There's a large and growing movement of left-wing terrorism in this country. It's well organized and funded, and it's shielded by far-left Democrat judges. I'm going to say it again. He said it's shielded. Left-wing terrorism is shielded by far-left Democrat judges, prosecutors, and attorneys general. The only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and terror networks. You got a judge's house on fire because she ruled against their sorry ass. You got a Democratic congressman who pointed out how he's doing this. There's a clear, wide open example of him doing this, as he then calls everyone as vile, despicable, and anti-American. But he's automatically calling anybody who disagrees with him domestic terrorists with terror networks, including judges. I want you to imagine how fast you'd get calls from Secret Service and officials and FBI agents if you go on and promote consistently on a platform that you have, talking about how you're going to go after Supreme Court judges because they're vile, despicable, and they're terrorists with terrorist networks that they're protecting, and saying that power must be used to dismantle them. But, you know, Stephen Miller can do it because Stephen Miller is part of this fascist regime that thinks they can do whatever they want. And now that the pushback is coming, as we just pointed out, they're trying to get more of the military to point more guns in your face before you finally realize it. You know that back and forth that Stephen Miller had with Dan Goldman? That was like late 10 o'clock at night on the 5th, a couple days ago. In between those fights back and forth where he denied having any kind, I don't know if he even really denied it, where he accused any Democrats of having violent rhetoric. And I can't believe you'd say this. You're vile and disgusting. He literally posted this around the exact same time. He says ICE facilities are federal property conducting a federal mission of immigration enforcement that protects the lives and livelihoods of 300 million American citizens. The president has undisputed authority under both statute and the Constitution to deploy troops stationed in any state to defend a federal facility from domestic terrorism or violent assault. And he puts in parentheses, just as he has the authority to dispatch any federal protective asset from and to any state. He's mad about Oregon and Portland. He said the Portland police have refused to render aid and assistance to ICE officers. The intention and purpose of the attacks on ICE is to prevent ICE from performing its duties and to force as many ICE officers as possible out of the field and into a defensive posture. That sounds like war talk. He says it is a violent armed resistance designed to incapacitate the essential operations of the duly elected federal government by force. A district court judge has no conceivable authority whatsoever to restrict the president and commander-in-chief from dispatching members of the U.S. military to defend federal lives and property, aka attack American citizens, use them as training grounds, as we told the military that he wants to do. Last part about this. Today's judicial ruling is one of the most egregious and thunderous violations of constitutional order we've ever seen, and is yet the latest example of an unceasing efforts to nullify the 2024 election by fiat. By the way, you know what he's so mad about? If there was another appellate judge, a federal judge somewhere that ruled against their sending of more troops into Portland, Oregon, that's what he's over here bitching and complaining about, while he's having a fight with Representative Goldman about how these other folks are attacking too many of these right-wing and ICE agents, while at the same time what he's fighting with Goldman about is a firebomb that happened at a judge's house that they're considering liberal. You just keep throwing your bullshit against the wall and they expect it to stick because they know the level of stupidity combined with the level of racism through this country is palpable. And it's enough for them to continue to act like they're on the right side of this. Do those sound like Americans to you, or do they sound like terrorists? And every time he mentions domestic terrorisms and these guys, we have to bring them to heel, what he's talking about is himself. So we'll see. Fucking Pinky in the brain in the White House, planning every day new ways to take over the United States. I guess next is the world. Like I said, I was hoping for maybe some like good news on a Monday. But so far we got military leaders that are probably, who knows, speculating by other former military leaders to be considering how it is they can follow illegal orders. We've got the guy who's running part of the White House and Stephen Miller, the immigration system, the immigration deportation plan, 100% talking about how judges are the enemies of this country and they're part of terror networks. Just want to remind you guys of what we just went over. And when one of their houses gets firebombed, it's crickets. Just like as we've seen, the vast number of domestic terrorists that are homegrown white nationalists, how when they attack people, there's crickets. Maybe I can get to this before I go to that other story. You know what? Let me go to the other story because I promised it. Maybe I'll come back to what's going on in our cities. I posted about this on the page as just a post because I think it was Saturday morning. Another man, I keep meaning to give you guys credit. One of the folks who watches the watch party did put me up on this, as he originally did about the whole thing with Razzle Dazzle Mo and Mike Johnson and his alleged Grindr account. Let me remind you guys what we last talked about with Razzle Dazzle. I'm not going to play his whole video. He had a couple long ones, but he was afraid. His videos about how he's going to expose Mike Johnson as the hypocrite he is on Grindr, those have all been taken down. He's looking for legal help. He's looking for for legal donations. He's trying to find a way out, but he definitely said he's been threatened, and the information has been given to other folks. Just to remind you guys where his fear was before we get to those updates. Here's old Razzle Dazzle Mo.
I would refer to my video yesterday when I told you that I had provided this information to my legal team, and it was then provided to a trusted media outlet. I no longer have this information in my possession. It is in several sources' hands. This media outlet is vetting this information and will report on it. I know this is not what you were hoping to hear today, but rest assured this information will be out. I haven't stopped shaking in 3 days. I know there are consequences to words. And that's what I'm figuring out with my attorneys right now.
Razzle Dazzle Mo was shaken after he had those declarations and threats to go ahead and expose Mike Johnson. As I went to the weekend, I was put up on this particular streamers and podcasters page, Reese Waters. I'm sure many of you guys know he seems to have a pretty popular page. I'd seen him before, but I'd forgotten his name. And I went through his discussion about this. And he had a couple of instances of more things that I hadn't seen before. I had just seen what Razzle Dazzle had put out or had said he was going to put out, and potentially what the response was. One of those folks that Reese Waters, by the way, you guys check out his whole thing. He talked extensively about it. Find him over on YouTube. I went to a guy's page that he referenced real quick. And I said, wait a second, I saw a TikTok handle there. Let me go find who CJ Baker Fitness is. And this is one of the things I found on this page. And as you guys see this, I'll come back to it and show you exactly what it is that he posted. Oh, did I go? It takes so long to come through. Here goes. Let's go now. Those are some of the images that I posted on that post talking about this story that I wanted to get to today. But I'm going to go ahead and freeze it on one of these frames, or both of them actually, to show you guys what it is that CJ Baker Fitness posted that I don't know if it's somehow related to Razzle Dazzle, but it's definitely it's worth considering. Let's put it that way. This is the alleged account back and forth from what it is that Mike Johnson, they said, was saying to some unknown person on Grindr as far as a potential meetup. It says, what luxurious hair you have. Of course, Mike Johnson is the blue. And it says, and the respondent says, thank you. I would return the favor and giving you a compliment, but I don't know what you look like. And then he says, are you in town for a couple of days visiting DC? He said, yes, I am. Are you offering me a tour? To which allegedly Mike Johnson says, I can give you one. Here's where it gets, pretty salacious. I have a few contacts. We can go to the Dabney for dinner, and then back to my place, and I can blow your brains out while pulling on that luxurious hair. Jesus. responds back to, "Oh, straightforward, I see, LOL, especially from a man who won't show his face." He says, "Very discreet man with a few kids, not trying to mess up my situation." And then to which, as I just moved to this next slide, again posted by this back and forth, as you heard with that music behind it, "What time should I pick you up from your hotel?" with Mike Johnson's face there, you know, looking that you probably don't want to look at. Again, I saw this from another third party, but then I went directly to his page to see where that came from. But I want you guys to notice, maybe you did see it. That's why I kept up part of that title he had on the right side. That date was March of 2023. I looked at it closer. It said 3-23. I mean, you know, I'm not on TikTok all that much. I assume that means March 2023. Right now it's October 2025. This could have been from so much longer ago. Let's hear from CJ Baker Fitness himself, because he said he got calls and maybe in some point some threats. But let's start with this one explanation that he had for what it is, the information that he had, and why he thinks that people should pay attention to it. Here's this guy.
So PolitiFact messaged me inquiring about the Mike Johnson Grindr conversation, and they wanted to verify that this was a true story, and they asked to speak directly to the person who was making these claims. And so I messaged the person and I said, you know, PolitiFact wants to message you. Do you want to talk to them? Well, he said no. Obviously, he wants to remain anonymous. The only reason why he shared it with me is because he's been following me and he trusts me. So I told him that he said he's not willing to do that. And PolitiFact went through with the story and claimed that there's no truth to it and it's a false story because the picture that he shared was from March 5th, 2025. And so then I reached back out to the person and I said, hey, they're saying that this picture was from March 5th, 2025. What gives? And he responded and said, no. This picture was from 2023. And he sent me an uncropped version of the conversation with the date. And it checks out. That picture was sent in 2023. So he was having this conversation on Grindr with Mike Johnson, allegedly, in 2023, which was before Mike Johnson became Speaker of the House. This is another argument that PolitiFact is making, that why would the Speaker of the House be sharing his picture and be meeting at a public place and blah, blah, blah. This was before he was Speaker of the House.
I don't know, bro. So now we're left trusting CJ Baker Fitness, who apparently is bringing further receipts than even that we saw. Not much from Razzle Dazzle Mo there, but even a PolitiFact check asked all these questions and didn't maybe get all the information that they needed to confirm it, so they went to denying it. Maybe he should have given them that extra level of evidence with the date at the top being from 2023, which also goes to, which was my first question. Why would Mike Johnson put his face in front of a photo and send it over Grindr when he's the Speaker of the House and we know all of his stances? But before, how many of you guys heard of Mike Johnson before he became Speaker of the House? I hadn't. Maybe folks who were, you know, in his area that voted for him or voted against him, maybe had heard of him, but he wasn't a huge national figure. He came about once they got rid of Kevin McCarthy and kicked his ass out. Then came Moses Mike Johnson out of nowhere. Who knows? Maybe Donald Trump has dirt on him. But allegedly all this is happening. And here's more from CJ Baker. And again, a lot of this stuff I fed off of from when I saw from Reese Waters' post about this whole thing. Again, he went in extensive detail, but I got this directly from CJ Baker Fitness over on TikTok. Here's more.
Take down the Mike Johnson photo. I guess it's making Mike not feel good, and I guess he's having a really bad day. But I was sent that.
Sorry, guys, this looks like it's delaying for me. Someone restarted for you guys. I'm seeing it, but I'm not sure if you guys are. Let's start this again.
I just received a call from the FBI that I need to take down the Mike Johnson photo. I guess it's making Mike not feel good, and I guess he's having a really bad day. But I was sent that by someone on Instagram. Ow, my neck. And he said that it's true, and he said that this is something that had taken place in DC, and that if I wouldn't mind sharing it, he would really appreciate that. And so that's what happened. And but unfortunately, I probably should delete it because I don't want Mike to have a bad day. Oh, my neck. Oh. All right.
FBI contacts. Again, this is all coming from his own personal account where he's talking about all these things, but it does go further back than any of this discussion happening just now. That makes this a lot more intriguing. The last thing that makes this intriguing is I'm sure you guys have heard of this guy. His name is Tizzy Int. I see him all over the place all the time. The guy with the long beard who always ends up helping getting the internet to help him find folks that do nefarious, crazy, and a lot of times racist and bigoted, misogynistic shit online. Tizzy Int jumped on this story as well too, and he had a bit of an explanation as to what happened to him and his stories on TikTok. And maybe this leads a little bit more to the validity of this.
So a user here on TikTok named Razzle Dazzle made a video about having information.
And it's delaying. Here it comes.
So a user here on TikTok named Razzle Dazzle made a video about having information about that guy that he was going to release if that guy didn't swear in the new duly elected official who could be the deciding signature to release the Epstein files. And then that video got taken down. His video and anyone who duetted it, including myself, and I got a strike for it. And then he made an update video explaining that he turned the video over to some journalists to vet the information and go through it properly and release it as such, and that he no longer had the stuff in his possession, and that it had been given to several other people, and in the event that anything happened to him because he had no intentions of harming himself, that would be released, but he's getting just slammed with death threats and hate. So that video came out. I duetted that video. Today, that video got a community guideline violation, got removed. When I appealed it, appeal denied. TikTok really doesn't want to talk about this. Why would that be? What has happened recently in the news about a purchase and version of America? And so yeah, that video is still up on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, etc.
So apparently, according to a few, there was other folks, again, Reese Waters pointed out other folks that had posted about this and were immediately taken down, community guidelined, and censored over on TikTok. Apparently only over on TikTok for just talking about it. It's just, if if the idea is to try and get this to go away, this is not one of those ways to get it to go away. It's all alleged. It's all the things that, again, our original guy, Razzle Dazzle, said eventually is going to come out based off of these other media folks that he's given it to. And now from years ago, someone else has more receipts if you buy what it is that they're saying or the validity of the things that they've shown. I just wanted to give you guys that update because, as I said, I was just waiting for the information. I can't say one way or another yet, but I just keep seeing information. It's all alleged at this point. We'll see. But again, the point is not, as other folks have pointed out, the point is not to be like, oh, look at Mike Johnson. Don't you want to make fun of him? Mike Johnson is weaponizing this BS. He's weaponizing this hate towards certain people and implementing it in our society to make sure that people have limited rights in our country based off of who they are. And if he is then also on sites like Grindr, as we saw all these Republicans, every time they get collected in one city, they overload the damn thing. And then it shows all of this hypocrisy when it is who it is that they hate, and it is themselves. That's why they keep talking about drag queens coming after your children as they cover up the Epstein files. So I understand that I had to take a break from the normal fascist breakdown of things that are going on in this country, but I figured I'd give you guys that update because the fascists have a lot to hide. There's a reasons why Mike Johnson, I think, is beginning to crumble a little bit. He's getting tired of all of the consistent defenses of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump keeps throwing things for him to have to defend. A lot is on his shoulders. So maybe this is something else that's on his shoulders. Allegedly. let's go to this last thing. I got to go to TDR in a minute, but I want to show you guys something that also happened very recently in Chicago, since Donald Trump has now invaded that city. And this is what they want to say are the violent folks that are coming for ICE agents who are kidnapping people indiscriminately, just don't care about it. Check it out. I'm sorry, this is done by Quadzilla Hikes. He's also apparently a veteran. He previously in his bio, I think, talks about how he was a person who posted about hiking because it's his love. That is until we had a fascist administration come in, and he's now breaking down things like their lies on this particular situation in Chicago.
On Saturday, Border Patrol shot a woman in Chicago. Here is the video of that incident. I'm going to read you the DHS statement, and you tell me if they're lying. This morning, Border Patrol agents were conducting a routine patrol near the intersection of 39th Place and South Kedzie Avenue when they were attacked and rammed by vehicles and boxed in by 10 cars. Agents were unable to move their vehicle and exited the car. One of the drivers who rammed the law enforcement vehicle was armed with a semi-automatic weapon. Law enforcement was forced to deploy their weapons and fired defensive shots at an armed U.S. citizen who drove herself to the hospital to get care for wounds. From what I can tell, the woman who was shot is in this black vehicle. The big white truck is Border Patrol. Their press release reads like they were surrounded by cars, by 10 cars blocked in, being rammed by multiple vehicles. And then they had no choice but to get out to escape this encircling ambush and to open fire. There's only one car ramming anybody. The white Border Patrol truck was in the front. They could have driven away at any time. And the Border Patrol vehicle in the back, again, they drove into this other car. They want you to think it was an organized attack by 10 vehicles. It was one vehicle. The other vehicles are just normal people stuck there in construction traffic. DHS also says the shooting victim drove herself to the hospital. That's contradicted by the Chicago Fire Department, which says they picked her up about a mile away from where the shooting occurred. So they want us to believe that there was like a concerted ambush on DHS using multiple vehicles to ram them and box them in, and agents felt so threatened that they had to open fire, and yet they just let the people who rammed them and who they had to shoot, they just let them go.
This is why my starting point every time we talk about anything this administration does is that true? Because everything else you guys say is a lie. There's a story that they have as far as this whole confrontation with the ramming of a vehicle and an encircling of 10 other cars that are trying to kill all of these agents that are just trying to kill people. It's weird, you know, they're attacking people, but then when a confrontation happens, what they want to do is whine and complain about how they're being attacked while they have guns in people's faces. So as this breakdown continues on, it gets a little bit more pointed and direct. This woman that they shot in the Chicago area and said she was ramming them and attacking them with a semi-automatic weapon, there's a little bit of a background behind her and them, and it's not a coincidence. Here we go.
The armed woman was named in a CBP intelligence bulletin last week for doxing agents online. This is the most disturbing part of this story. They are monitoring activists. They are monitoring their online activities. They are building lists of these activists. That's secret police tactics. That's Gestapo tactics. Very interesting, too, that the Border Patrol agent that she supposedly doxed is seen on site of the shooting, where he later goes on to just blatantly assault another bystander who's doing nothing but standing there. StopIce.net and a couple other Instagram accounts exposed this agent earlier, and then DHS subpoenaed Meta to get their personal information. They said this was for a criminal investigation, all for releasing public information on this agent. So let me recap. DHS was circulating an internal memo that said, keep an eye out on this activist because she released public information on this Border Patrol agent. Then a week later, the same activist that was in that intelligence bulletin gets shot by Border Patrol, and the same guy she was accused of doxing is on the scene, and then he is filmed assaulting another citizen.
So is all that a coincidence? That they've compiled a list of activists that they're upset about, that they said are doxing specific and certain ICE agents. One of those particular ICE agents was on the scene at this very point when they shot that same activist that they're upset about, and they've compiled a list on. then he finds himself attacking someone else, completely exhibiting that he's an over-aggressive fascist asshole who's very happy to carry out orders of attacking American cities in cities like Chicago, where Donald Trump, his dad, has told them he's going to unleash more of them to attack American cities for some more training sessions, because he hates this country, because he's a traitor, and there are his fascist foot soldiers. It's exactly how it works. And while they're carrying out these fascist orders, they sit in a corner and complain and cry about how they're being attacked. That's the plan. There's a bunch of more basis behind them than there was a big confrontation afterwards because people saw the violence that was being carried out. And they called those folks, guess what? They called them domestic terrorists. Same thing Stephen Miller's calling folks that he said he's ready to then come unleash the authorities on and to harm and kill more folks based on their assumptions, based on their reports. Everything about to report about this in this CBS and also NBC News report ABC and CBS reports that I saw from were saying according to DHS, not according to anything else except for DHS, whose main objective is to hide these atrocious kidnappings, harmings, and I mean, we've seen it, killing of people, because they expect you to go along with it. I got a lot more from this. I'm going to come back afterwards to do a little bit more, but first I got to go to damage report. Let's see what John's talking about. I'm going to go over there with you guys. So see this as a see you later, because I'm going to come back after we're done with damage report and do a couple more of these, a little bit more of this story, because there's more to it. There's more to their aggressive behavior on American cities, and I just want you to keep seeing it and be aware of, maybe you're nearby those cities, maybe you're in them yourself, but the attack is on, and the victimhood is also the very next step. I'm gonna see you guys in a second over at the damage report. We'll be back here after another hour and a half. Don't forget, and if you can't, these will all still be up again. Like the stream on your way out before we come back and do another one. I appreciate you guys. We'll see you guys in a couple seconds. See you, man.